Thank you very much to all the witnesses, and we'll now ask questions here, and I'll begin with myself for 5 minutes. The subcommittee hosted an event last month to screen the award-winning documentary, Even a Bird Needs a Nest, which depicts the scourge of forced evictions in Cambodia perpetrated at the hands of the government. I reviewed the tape last night myself. Unfortunately, the people were speaking Cambodia, and it had French subtitles, and I hadn't taken French since college. I got the gist of it, but a lot of it went beyond. But Mr. Mitchell, in the past, you said that U.S. investment will help the human rights situation and difficulties over land disputes in Cambodia because it's subject to higher standards, such as the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. As you're aware, land grabs have become an enormous problem throughout the entire country, and nearly 1 million people have been forced out of work or have no home to go to due to these forced evictions, which have not ceased despite Hun Sen's promises. One of my concerns regarding this issue is whether or not U.S. companies are involved in these land evictions. How is Cambodia implementing the standards established under the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, and how has your work helped set these standards in Cambodia? Also, you stated in your testimony that Chinese investments in Cambodia have made it increasingly difficult for U.S. companies to promote human rights and at the same time compete for business. How are you and the businesses you represent effectively helping the human rights situation in Cambodia and conducting responsible business despite the country's corruption and lack of rule of law? And what are you specifically doing to help stop these land grabs and help the Cambodian people? And then I'd be happy if Ms. Schuler might want to comment on the land grabs as well. So Mr. Mitchell and then Ms. Schuler.
That's a very long list of questions.
It is. And you've got like 60 seconds to answer them all.
Excellent. Forced land evictions at the end of the day are just a bad business practice. The economic land concessions involved are primarily agriculture. A few of them are involved in plantations. There's a need for labor involved in any economic land concession. As such, we advocate, we've worked with the Cambodian government, the Ministry of Land Management, and the German development agency, GIZ, the development of what is referred to as the leopard skin approach to concessions. This is effectively setting aside space for existing occupants, not relocating them, working around them, and using them or providing them labor and employment opportunities at a livable wage. This has proven very, very successful for Grandis Timber, which I was CEO of for 5 years, and is cited in one of the UN reports on the land grab issue as one of the best practices. With regard to U.S. FCPA issues, we at AmCham advocate this. We hold basically annual seminars on this, which has enjoyed the support of, I believe it was the Treasury Department. And additionally, the Cambodian government is sending senior level officials. In my discussions with officials, they know what the U.S. FCPA is, and they know that I, as a U.S. passport holder, cannot violate that or I run the risk of the penalties. Chinese investment is a very real issue. Chinese investment is not governed by things like the U.S. FCPA. The investors at their institutional level are typically state-owned enterprises, and they do not have the social responsibility or the environmental sustainability criteria that U.S. institutional and European institutional investors mandate. The more money coming in from those two areas in investment, the more competitive we are in implementing programs where we're not asking the government to hold us accountable, but rather our investors themselves are holding us accountable.
Thank you. Let me cut you off there because I want Ms. Schuler to jump in with the short time I have left. If you could turn the mic on.
I would add just that, as Mr. Mitchell mentioned, there are a small handful of investors that perhaps have obligations from outside investments to comply with the with certain rules, but the fact is that Cambodia's 2001 land law and its sub-decree on economic land concessions already actually provides fairly stringent safeguards which are routinely ignored. There are requirements for size limitations which are ignored, prior environmental and social impact reports, prior consultations and consent from affected communities, transparency, fair and adequate compensation. Those have all been routinely ignored. And these are, we're talking, the vast majority are these large agricultural, industrial land concessions, which also have not only past forced violent evictions, but they have ongoing rights violations, as you mentioned. There's been crackdowns on the demonstrations, arbitrary criminal prosecutions. There's been no offers of compensation or legal remedies to assist the hundreds of families that have continued to suffer as a result of losing their homes or farmland. And I would just want to quickly mention that in May of last year, the government asserted that it addressed many of these issues through a directive suspending new land concessions and mandating a review of existing concessions, and also by the Prime Minister's June launch of an ad hoc land titling program using thousands of student volunteers. And both of the directive and the privately funded titling scheme have been highly problematic. A loophole in the directive allowed for at least 16 new concessions to be granted afterwards, totaling over 80,000 hectares. And Likado is unaware of any systematic review of problematic concessions taking place. And while the push to expedite land titling is laudable in theory, the program completely bypassed established land titling state institutions set up to perform these duties. So the program has been implemented in a secretive manner with no provisions for independent monitoring, with civil society organizations explicitly told to stay away, and numerous credible reports from landholders, especially in indigenous communities, being intimidated or tricked into accepting terms dictated by volunteer students. So such individual titles undermine these indigenous communities' communal land titling efforts.
Okay, thank you very much. My time's expired. I'll recognize the ranking member for 5 minutes. Thank you.